Well, welcome and good morning. Welcome to Sierra Foothills Unitarian Universalists. My name is Reverend A.J. Van Tyne, and I'm the minister of this fine congregation. I'm joined this morning for this service on Atonement, Renewal, and Universalism by Joan Harris, our worship associate, also Patty Leftridge, our music director, and Adrian, our director of religious education, will be doing the time for all ages. And we, of course, are joined by all of you. You are all welcome here today. And all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways that you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the varied ways that you move through and interact with the world, you are welcome here. With all of the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. Whether you come this morning feeling despair or hope for our world and its future, you are welcome here. No matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you may return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today.
We light our chalice with these words from the Reverend Victoria Safford. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope, not the prudent gates of optimism, which are somewhat narrower, not the stalwart, boring gates of common sense, nor the strident gates of self-righteousness, which creak on shrill and angry hinges. People cannot hear us there, they cannot pass through. Nor the cheerful, flimsy garden gate of everything's going to be all right, but a different, sometimes lonely place. The place of truth-telling about your own soul first of all and its condition. The place of resistance and defiance. The piece of ground from which you see the world, both as it is and as it could be, as it will be. The place from which you glimpse not only struggle, but the joy of the struggle. And we stand there, beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see.
Everyone. So today I'm going to share a story about one of our Universalist ancestors named John Murray. You never know what the wind will blow in or which way the wind blows. The wind can change directions and maybe change your life. It happened to John Murray. As a young man, John Murray had excellent fortune blow his way. He had a fine education, a steady job, a loving wife, and a young son. Life was good. Then, suddenly, everything changed. John Murray's wife and their son became sick and they died. John lost his job, lost all his money, and was put in jail because he could not pay his bills. We don't do that anymore, by the way. It's not cool. John was a very religious man, a universalist, who had even preached about a loving God. And now he was not sure what he believed. He felt like his life was over. Friends urged him to go someplace and start again. So John sailed for America on a ship named the Hand in Hand. The wind blew that ship toward their destination, New York. But then a fog rolled in and the ship ran aground in New Jersey instead. John and a few others volunteered to leave the ship to go on land and get directions and supplies. As he was walking ashore, John saw a farmhouse with a small chapel or church beside it. It belonged to Thomas Potter. Thomas Potter greeted John, gave food for everyone on the ship, and invited John to come back and have dinner with him that night. When John came back, Thomas Potter showed him around the chapel. Thomas Potter said that he believed in a loving God who wanted to accept all people into heaven. This was a pretty radical idea back in those days. John said that he believed the same thing. Thomas Potter told John that he had built the chapel, but was waiting for God to send him a minister. John, he said, you are that minister. I have waited for you for a long time. Now, John did not want to hear this. He was not a preacher anymore, and he was determined never to preach again. And yet, Thomas Potter seemed confident that John was the Universalist preacher he had waited for, and he asked John to preach on Sunday. I can't preach on Sunday, said John, because as soon as the wind changes, my boat will set sail and I need to be on it. If the boat has not sailed by Sunday, will you preach? Asked Thomas Potter. If I'm still here on Sunday, I will preach, said John Murray. Now, what do you think happened? Did the wind blow? Did the Hand in Hand sail away, taking John Murray with it? No wind blew. No ship sailed. And John Murray preached on Sunday morning, September 30th, 1770, in the chapel that Thomas Potter had built for him so many years before. The Universalist message of the power of love was good news to many who heard it. It was good news for John. The winds of change blew yet again for John Murray. He now wanted to preach more than anything, and he did for many years, and he helped found Universalism in America. He is one of the ancestors of our faith, and we, as Unitarian Universalists, owe a special thanks to Thomas Potter. It was his hospitality that brought John Murray back to the pulpit. We also owe a special thanks to the wind that blew him in and would not blow him out again. Now, if you ever are in danger of forgetting this wonderful story, there's actually a song to the tune of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean that shares the exact same story. It goes like this. John Murray sailed over the ocean. From England he sailed o'er the sea. He just lost his wife and his baby and was as sad as he could be. Sail on, sail on, sail on, John Murray, sail on, sail on. Sail on, John Murray, sail on. The ship he was on hit a sandbar. The wind would not let it go free. John Murray got off in New Jersey to see what he could see. Sail on, John Murray, sail on, sail on. Sail on, John Murray, sail on. I'll send this out on Churchy so you all can see the song and sing along with it too. I hope you have a wonderful week.
I grew up in a mostly white, homogeneous small town near here. My family attended a Gospel Hall evangelical Christian faith congregation. It's my understanding that the Gospel Hall assemblies are a conservative strand of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and they can be compared with Pentecostal churches. The practices and ideals of this evangelical group come from the doctrine of salvation by grace through faith in Jesus's atonement. It has been my understanding that by asking for Jesus' forgiveness and asking him into your heart, you can become saved and all is forgiven. It has been my experience that when saved individuals commit wrongs, they need only ask for forgiveness from Jesus, and they shall be cleansed of all their sins and wrongdoings. So when I was growing up and the people in my life made mistakes or did things that were wrong, I saw lots of praying, but no real ownership of these wrongs, nor any personal atonement for their actions. I suppose the assumption was that only Jesus needs to grant forgiveness. I don't ever recall seeing individuals who were most influential in my formative years apologize. As a result, I do not believe that I was ever taught to apologize, make amends, or atone for hurts that I might have inflicted on others. I don't believe that I learned this life lesson until well into adulthood, when I joined a 12-step program of recovery. I have since learned that the 12 steps have not only been a path to recovery, but they have been a plan for living in right relations with others. While taking the steps and continuing to use them in my life, I am guided to take inventory of things that are disturbing me. I list people, organizations, or principles that take up too much of my mental energy. Once I write these things down, I discuss them with a trusted person who acts as a conduit to the collective consciousness. During these discussions, it is revealed who, if anyone, I have harmed and how to make amends. I have also learned that making amends or atoning for wrongdoing is more than just a simple apology. It is making wrongs right in a way that is acceptable to the person whom I have harmed. This process also helps me to identify character defects, which I can work to transform. I have found a way to make amends or to atone for my wrongdoings, but it doesn't seem as if a lot of Americans have found ways. If an entire group of people do not feel the need to be held accountable to anyone other than an invisible entity, then how is it possible for this large group of people to recognize the need for and seek atonement? I realize that not every form of Christianity emphasizes the belief that Jesus forgives all sins so easily and completely, yet it is still one of the most identifiable and impactful beliefs in American religion. This is why it seems to me that US citizens today can't or won't take ownership or responsibility for wrongs committed in the past by our ancestors. Wrongs that were committed in the name of God. Early slaveholders used the Bible to justify slavery and the doctrine of manifest destiny. We have generations of Americans who were indoctrinated with the belief that it was justifiable to treat individuals who were either African or American indigenous peoples as less than. And if it was not justifiable, then it would simply be forgiven by asking God for forgiveness. With this thinking, it is no wonder why so many US citizens resist acknowledging the wrongdoings of the past and resist reparations as atonement. It seems to me that similarly, this resistance runs so deep, it's difficult for many folks to see disparities between white, Black, and Indigenous peoples and peoples of color. Therefore, they reject the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements of equality. As a Unitarian Universalist, it's my obligation to recognize the systems from which I benefit and to use these privileges to live into the sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. As part of living in right relations with BIPOC, whom I share this planet, and as living into the seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, I support the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements that support marginalized folks. As a Unitarian Universalist, I see this as an obligation. I also believe that as I have inherited the beliefs of my white ancestors, as I have inherited the benefits of my white ancestors, I have also inherited the legacy of the wrongs that were inflicted upon marginalized peoples and of the systems that are in place which continue to marginalize them. And there are so many systems which are oppressive, so many that it can become overwhelming. If I am overwhelmed, it is possible that others like me are overwhelmed. So, what can we do to atone for the wrongs of our ancestors? Thinking back to the amends process in the 12-step program, I know that I can make direct amends through words and actions, financial amends through reparations, or living amends by living out new behaviors. I believe I do some of each of these types of amends. I have participated in several marches, rallies, and protests. I have made phone calls and written emails to politicians regarding varied issues that affect these groups. I have given small cash donations to Standing Rock and Black Lives Matter, and I make small direct contributions to one of Sacramento's Black Lives Matter's leaders. I also make it a point to check my own actions, and when I'm called out on racial bias or engage in microaggressions, I listen and learn without being overly sensitive or reactive, and I work towards changing my behavior. I believe that when I know better, I must do better.
Thank you, Joan. In this community of mutual care, we celebrate the great joys of life together and help share the burden of sorrows and grief. And as such, each week we share specific joys and sorrows from the lives of our members. So if at any time during the week you have a joy or sorrow that you would like shared, please email joysandsorrows@mysfuu.org, and what you write will be shared in worship and in the e-beacon. If you have any other joys or sorrows now that were not emailed in, you may type them into the chat bar now for others to read. And from what we have submitted, we simply have one this morning. Millie Livingston offers her big thanks for the many birthday cards filled with love and good wishes and hugs that she received virtually, of course. Holding this wonderful joy in our hearts, along with all those joys and sorrows shared in the chat and those left unsaid, but in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. Holding all of these, I invite you now to a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us, divine presence known by many names and in many ways. We gather in this time of atonement, these high holy days of the Hebrew calendar, approaching Yom Kippur, to seek renewal, to return to a state of right relationship with ourselves, with each other, and the world. Return, repentance, or in Hebrew, Teshuva. We seek this return in our country, as we hold in our hearts all those that continue to protest, continue the uprising in Portland and Rochester, in Louisville, where protesters seek refuge in the First Unitarian Church every night as curfew falls, as police threaten to arrest anyone who leaves the church grounds, and threaten also to storm the church and to arrest protesters for as petty charges as having flammable hand sanitizer. Our prayers are with the clergy and religious leaders and protesters in all these cities, crying out for repentance for the sins of white supremacy and for atonement for actual change. For the murders of black and brown bodies at the hands of state, we must reform and atone and change our country. Those protesters crying out for accountability, for justice, which is still so wanting when the officers who killed Breonna Taylor are indicted not for the shots fired into her apartment, but for those fired into neighbors, the unintended targets. Justice is still wanting. For those imprisoned in ICE detention centers who have had hysterectomies and other surgeries without consent, justice is still wanting. For justice, we pray. It must come soon. And we grieve for the more than 200,000 lives lost in America to the COVID-19 pandemic. All while we brace ourselves for an inevitable surge in cases as fall and autumn comes to this hemisphere. And in the realm of the particular, with Unitarian Universalists across the country, we mourn the death of Elandria Williams, who served as co-moderator of our association from 2017 until June of this year. We mourn the passing of a great leader and are thankful for all of E's work to shepherd our denomination through difficult times and to articulate a vision of a vibrant and grounded Unitarian Universalism. We mourn, we grieve, and we seek return, atonement, and renewal. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. And I now invite you to continue in the spirit of reflection, meditation, and prayer as we hear hymn 123, Spirit of Life.
Rising
Thank you, Patty. This reading comes from Dane Cutler out of the Social Justice Warrior's Guide to the High Holy Days, selections on Yom Kippur. And God says, "And you shall make sure that every time you list the litany of your ugly and your rotten and your wicked, you end the litany with a prescription for how to move on from it, through reflection, reparation, and repair, so that you do not get stuck in the ugly, which is mighty and sticky and will close your ears to the chauffeur and keep you asleep and in despair." And God says, Rosh Hashanah has another name, Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance, and Yom Kippur is called the Day of Judgment. But on Yom Kippur, we cast aside all things that allow us to forget the horrors of the world, all our escape routes, all our distractions. We wake today to face the horrors head on. So if you want to call Yom Kippur the day of staying woke, that works too. And God says, "And on this day, you will not be able to turn to another for comfort or escape, but instead must hold yourself. You will surprise yourself with how much enough you are." And God says, "And lo, let us go deep, go in. You have done what you can, and now is the time to face yourself. Go with courage, for you are doing the work of the righteous. Go with comfort, for you have not given up. Go with trembling, for though you are small, you are an indispensable part of greatness. You are necessary. You are essential. You are here." And God says, "Why you remind yourself that your origin is dust and your end is dust, and humans but are a flock of vanishing dreams. You can't do this work from high up. The work is to be done from your most vulnerable place. And what faster way to get vulnerable than to go deep into mortality? Shine your lantern on the rotten, the ugly, the stinking guts of yourself, reeking with shame and bile. Bring it to the light, then get to work." And God says, "When you face the ugly, you will do so with your fist upon your chest, beating at the place where your heart aches, in the hopes that you will crack yourself open and let the light in." And God says that when you cannot face the ugly because it is too hard and you hurt too much, that's why we have a book full of prayers, to give yourself a scaffolding through the process of acknowledgement and repentance. So open it and find something that resonates, because otherwise you might get stuck feeling guilty instead of moving toward healing. Keep moving, even when you're not doing it perfectly. Perfection is the enemy of Teshuva. And God says that when there are no words in the book, you shall rewrite the book on accordance with your language and your values and your journey, but keeping the spirit of the original translation and perspective, lest you end up like the cherry pickers who read all of Leviticus and find only castigation. But Black Lives Matter belongs in our liturgy. Make it so.
Thank you. In our liturgy, we find a scaffolding for the processes of spiritual transformation, for acknowledgement, for repentance, for lament. Not to indulge in guilt or to enact a performance that we think we ought to do, but sometimes just to express and to move through a deep well of sadness as we reckon with the world and our actions and all the unceasing implications of our collective words, deeds, and silences. Sometimes, like a child, we just need a good cry. a guttural, visceral, primal experience of sadness, grief, despair, disappointment in ourselves, even. And having fully allowed ourselves to experience the lamentation, we rest and then arise. Not fully healed, not any wiser or smarter or better than we were before, but able to move on to the next thing, able to continue the work. In a moment, I invite you to experience our offertory music in this way, not simply as a piece of beautiful classical Western music, though it is, but as a lament, a song full of tears.
Generosity is a spiritual practice of this congregation. When we offer our time, our talents, and our treasure, we deepen our engagement and become part of building the beloved community together. As part of our ethic of generosity, we also split our collection plate with a local community organization aligned with our values. This month, the Share the Plate recipient is Stand Up Placer. Stand Up Placer is an organization whose mission is to save lives by empowering survivors and educating communities to stand up to domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. To support Stand Up Placer and SFUU today, you can follow the link in the chat or navigate to our website, mysfuu.org, and click Give to SFUU. Here you can donate to SFUU at any time. For our Share the Plate program or directly to SFUU to pay your pledge. You can also download the app Give Plus Mobile, where all you have to do is create an account, put in our zip code, and select SFUU to give. Instructions and links are at the bottom of the Give page at mysfuu.org. As always, you may mail donations and pledges directly to the church at our 190 Finley Street address. If this is one of your first times visiting us, please know that you are our guest and there is no expectation that you contribute. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Thank you, Patty. Tonight will mark the beginning of Yom Kippur, and September the 30th marks the 250th anniversary of when John Murray preached the first Universalist sermon in North America. And this is also the last Sunday in our month with the Soul Matters theme of renewal. So are we feeling renewed yet? The concept that jumps out at me as these moments in time overlap on this Sunday is this concept of atonement. Now, universalism as a theology would traditionally in Christianity fall under the category of atonement theology, which describes where atonement theology means what does Jesus do by dying on the cross? How does that atone for the sins of all humanity? Well, many Christians would put an asterisk on the idea of it being for all humanity because they say, well, it is for all humanity and all of the sins, but as an individual, you need to have some combination of good work and or faith in Jesus or the teachings of the church or whatever it may be in order for that atonement to sort of take full effect in your cosmic being, in your soul. John Murray, however, preached a radically different atonement theology. His atonement did not come with an asterisk. Now, what he did say was that there might be some need for some souls to suffer some period of purifying hellfire, after which all would eventually be reconciled to God in heaven, which was a radical difference from the extreme approach that many Christians at the time took, which said, if you are not saved by the time that you die, it is eternal torture forever. In the subsequent generation, however, those raised on that universalism in America developed a theology that went even further and did not allow for a loving God to inflict any sort of torturous hellfire, purifying or not, on any of his beloved children. So the ultra universalists became differentiated from what became called the restorationists. That's sort of what we would call John Murray and his idea that, well, there's a little bit of torture, but then it's all fine. Eventually you are restored. Whereas over time, the younger generation was referred to as the ultra universalist position. And they said as soon as you died, you immediately went to heaven, regardless of what you have done, because that is how much God loves all his children. And over time, that ultra universalist position became the dominant form. And unfortunately, the Universalists sort of won the conversation in American Protestant and American Christian religion a little too well in the 19th century. Their universalism was a radical and defining feature of their denomination as the United States was being born, and only a few decades after the fire and brimstone, sinners in the hands of an angry God theology of Jonathan Edwards. But by the end of the 19th century, most mainline Protestant churches held enough of a universalist view that the Universalists themselves weren't as attractive as a denomination, and their numbers began to dwindle. And at the same time, their theology broadened to incorporate the discoveries of science, the wisdom of other religions. And so Universalism in the 20th century changed again and became much less concerned with the next world at all, and more about the possibility and the responsibility to create heaven on earth in this lifetime. So Universalism today, still alive and well within Unitarian Universalism, whether it's connected to a Christian theology or any other kind, or even atheism, it becomes articulated as the idea that all souls, all people are worthy, and that it is possible and it is up to us to create heaven on earth rather than hell. Now, the danger here lies in having such a high opinion of whoever or whatever is in control of the world in the course of history, and having such a high opinion of humanity, if those are even considered to be different things, that we can get carried away into feeling so assured that we are basically good people, that we will get things right in the end, that all we have to do is wait for history to progress onwards and upwards forever. And so we don't have to atone, we don't have to make apologies or make amends. It is up to every age to renew, in the language that makes sense to them, the spirit of universal love. It is our task in this historical moment to articulate a universalism that isn't just an uncritical faith in optimism. I think atonement is still a vital concept as we understand modern ideas of universalism. And I think there are actually many lessons to be learned from the Jewish tradition of Yom Kippur and the High Holy Days. So for a little more context, in an article from 2017, Rabbi Dana Ruttenberg discusses America's need to do Teshuva, to repent and practice atonement regarding the racism in our nation's history and its present. Her basic point is that for one who does not do Teshuva in response to doing wrong, they're very likely to end up in the same context again, causing the same harm to the same people or group of people. This is not unlike how slavery transformed into Jim Crow, which transformed into mass incarceration and has transformed into over-policing and extrajudicial executions of disproportionately of Black, Indigenous, and people of color at the hands of police. Rabbi Ruttenberg highlighted the inverse of this idea of if we don't repent, if we don't atone, we will find ourselves making the same mistakes again by quoting Maimonides, a great 12th century philosopher and sage in the Jewish tradition. Maimonides defines complete teshuva as that which happens when a person has the opportunity to commit the same sin he has had in the past, but does not. And he makes a different choice the second time around. Rabbi Ruttenberg goes on to explain that there are several steps to making teshuva. And what I find actually fascinating before I quote her is how well these line up with what Joan described in her reflection. The first step is you have to acknowledge what you did wrong, no matter whether it was intentional or not. So this is what Joan said, the direct apology, the direct acknowledgement, just being able to see it and face that a mistake was made, that harm was done. Second, you have to take actions to correct the mistake or to make amends if possible. This, of course, is the category of direct action, amends, reparation, donating our money to causes and movements that are working to make these amends and make these changes in society. And Rabbi Ruttenberg concludes that you need to invest some time working out how things can be different the next time. It's not enough to simply acknowledge that you did wrong, make it up to the person in some meaningful way. But if you're just going to turn around and do the same thing again and again, then that is not a true teshuva. And so that was, as Joan put so beautifully, living out new behaviors. And also note that none of these steps involve being forgiven. Rabbi Ruttenberg says the work should be done not to obtain absolution, but because it is the only moral way forward. This is a very different approach than the atonement, for instance, that Joan discussed in the more conservative Christianity of her childhood, where atonement is always through Jesus Christ and is a personal forgiveness from God and the divine, right? There's a lot of power in making that relationship of things we've done wrong, ways we've fallen short, as being connected to the divine and the incarnation of the divine, right? It's the idea that, well, if you have clothed the naked, fed the hungry, given money to the poor, you have done all these things to Jesus. That's the way that people talk about it. And that's very impactful. Or if you don't do it, if you neglect the poor and the oppressed, you are neglecting God himself. That's a very powerful thing. But the downside and the way that can be skewed out of control is then all you need is to have this forgiveness from the divine without actually interacting with your fellow human being. Can lead to a people who don't have much exercise in the muscle of atonement, as Joan was talking about. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we have, and in our history, as I described, we've had a very different theology than that, and yet we can still sometimes suffer from the same lack of exercise. And it really is, to me, a shame that fundamentalist Christianity has so tainted the terms of atonement and repentance and made them tools of abuse on a cosmic scale with divine weight. if you have a strong negative reaction to these terms, and maybe you've been having that reaction a lot in the sermon, I've been saying the words atonement and repentance, right? These can be heavy words given their history. I totally understand. It is not unreasonable to be wary of these concepts, given how they've been used to lock people down in shame and to perpetuate all sorts of systems of patriarchy and white supremacy and general oppression. That said, I do think that there's a slight baby in the bathwater thing going on here, where if we react against the theologies of atonement by saying, no, God is good, and so are humans, so there's no threat of hell, and so there's no need for atonement at all, suddenly we've moved into a place, especially if we are people who experience privilege as we move through the world, where we no longer feel we have to be accountable for the errors we make, for the harm that we perpetuate, inequalities that we benefit from without realizing. Now, I do not think that threat of hell is a good or necessary way of encouraging people to seek atonement. I think it should just simply be a spiritual practice, atoning for our errors. As Rabbi Ruttenberg said, it's not to attain absolution, it's the only moral way forward. Atoning for our errors is a spiritual practice, not a solution to the problems of guilt or shame, nor is it the natural, effortless result of being good people, reading the right articles and knowing the right things, knowing the most recent woke lingo. And for the record, let's just get this straight. There is no such thing as being a good person. There may be acting as a good person or having a good impact in the world, but the human condition is simply such that we are never 100% always perfect, good people. We are guaranteed to fail. We make mistakes. We hurt one another, and we are wrapped up in systems of oppression and harm that are so much bigger than any of us can control that we are inevitably going to perpetuate them to some degree or another. That does not make us bad people. We are entirely capable of making amends, atoning, repairing relationship, and that doesn't make us good people. Both of these realities, the fact that we will fail and harm each other, and our ability to atone and repair relationship, these don't make us good or bad people. They simply are the human condition. And this is why the covenantal nature of Unitarian Universalism speaks to me so deeply, because it isn't about what we believe. It isn't about having the path laid out simply to be followed, but it's about moving together in a community, in a relationship, knowing that we will stumble and fail and hurt one another, but knowing that if we put in the effort to atone, to repent for our wrongs, to listen deeply to one another, and particularly to listen to those crying out in suffering year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation, we may learn to do better, and then we may do better. Perhaps the simplest articulation of atonement, it seems to me, is one you may have heard from Maya Angelou. Once you know better, you do better. Or rather, not necessarily as a promise, but as a charge. When you know better, you should do better. Universalism promises that we can forge a better future for our world. But the only one or the only thing who can promise that it will actually happen is you, is me, is all of us working together, working for that new day to arrive.
Soon that day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear, and the children will smile without wondering whether on that day the fight to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. If we care, you and me. If we care, you and me.
Let us meet at the gates of hope, telling what we see, asking what others see, acknowledging our mistakes and errors, making amends, and doing better when we know better. At the gates of hope, may we make the promises to one another to make a new start and to renew the world. Please join me in words to extinguish our chalice. As we go forth, may we carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Blessed be.